The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. Its walls were made of crystal that glowed with soft light. The ceiling reached so high that clouds sometimes formed inside it. This was the place where the most powerful beings in the galaxy came to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. On this day, 467 species had sent their representatives to the council. Some of them looked like nothing humans had ever imagined. There were beings made of living gas, held together by magnetic fields. There were creatures of pure light. There were giants made of stone and tiny beings that floated like dust in the air. All of them had come because the Velthari had called an emergency meeting. The Velthari were ancient. They had existed when most other species were still learning to use fire. They could see the future, not perfectly, but in glimpses and visions that had proven accurate many times before. They rarely spoke in council meetings. When they did, wise beings listened. Ambassador Curvith floated to the center of the Great Hall. Her body was transparent, like water given form. Light passed through her and bent in strange ways. Every being in the hall could see that she was afraid. "Honored council members," she said. Her voice was carried by machines that translated her words into 4,000 languages at once. "I come with a warning. My people have seen something in the future that fills us with concern. There is a species rising on the edge of the galaxy. They will change everything." The hall grew quiet. Even the beings who usually talked during meetings fell silent. On the outer rim of the Orion Arm, there is a small planet. It circles an ordinary yellow star. The beings who live there call their world Earth. They call themselves humans. Morthax of the Kesori hegemony let out a loud laugh. He was a massive creature, covered in armored plates that clicked when he moved. His species had conquered 1,000 worlds. The humans. I know of them. My scouts have watched their planet. They have only just learned to fly through their own atmosphere. They still fight wars among themselves with primitive weapons. Why should we care about such creatures? Curvith turned to face him. Her form darkened with emotion. You see them as they are now. I have seen what they will become. In 300 of their years, they will spread across 1,000 star systems. In 500 years, they will challenge the oldest powers in this galaxy. They will change the rules that have governed civilization for millennia. Impossible, said Suvan of the Ethereal Collective. Suvan was made of interconnected particles that shifted and swirled as she spoke. We have mathematical models that predict how species develop. No civilization can grow that fast. The humans will follow the same path as every other species. They will advance slowly over thousands of years, just as we all did. Humans do not follow your models, Curvith replied. They are different. They are stubborn in ways that make no sense. When they should give up, they keep trying. When they should die, they find ways to survive. They form bonds with each other that cannot be explained by logic. They help strangers for no reason. And most dangerous of all, they refuse to believe that anything is impossible. High Arbiter. Zextolan raised 3 of its 7 arms to call for order. The High Arbiter was made of geometric shapes that constantly shifted and rearranged themselves. It had led the council for 2,000 years. What do you want us to do, Ambassador? I asked for intervention, Curvith said. Not destruction. The Velthari do not believe in killing species before they have done wrong, but we ask for containment. Put a barrier around their star system before they learn to travel faster than light. Guide their development. Slow them down. Prevent the chaos that my visions show. The council chamber exploded with noise. Representatives shouted at each other in hundreds of languages. The Kesori called Curves, warning foolish paranoia. The Ethereal Collective said her visions were statistical errors. The mercantile guilds, who controlled trade across the galaxy, calculated how much a blockade would cost and declared it too expensive. For 7 days, the council debated. Arguments went back and forth. Some species supported the Velthari. Most did not. In the end, High Arbiter Zextolan called for a vote. The result was clear. The council rejected the warning. The testimony of Ambassador Curvith will be recorded in our archives, the High Arbiter announced. But the Galactic Council does not find enough evidence to act against the humans. The matter is closed. The proposal for containment is rejected." Curveth bowed her transparent form in acceptance. But before she left, she spoke one last time. "Remember this day, honored council. Remember that you were warned. When the humans come, and I promise you they will come, remember that you chose not to listen." The council moved on to other matters. Within a week, most species had forgotten about the humans entirely. Earth was just a small blue dot in a vast galaxy filled with wonders. Why would anyone care about such an insignificant world? But on that insignificant world, things were happening that the council could not see. In a small laboratory in a country called the United States, a young scientist named Daniel Carter stared at his computer screen. The numbers on the screen should not have made sense. According to everything he had been taught, the equations he was looking at were impossible. But Daniel Carter did not believe in impossible. He had grown up poor. His teachers had told him he would never amount to anything. His guidance counselor had suggested he become a factory worker instead of wasting time on science. Everyone in his life had told him what he could not do. He had proven them all wrong. Now he was looking at equations that described how to bend space itself. If he was right, these equations would eventually allow humans to travel faster than light. They would open the door to the stars. Daniel worked through the night, checking his calculations again and again. By morning, he was certain. He had discovered something that would change human history. He had no way of knowing that far across the galaxy, an ancient species had just warned a council of aliens about what his people would become. He had no way of knowing that the council had laughed and dismissed that warning. He only knew that the universe was vast and full of mysteries, and that he wanted to explore every one of them. Daniel Carter saved his work and started writing the paper that would make him famous. Above his head, through the roof of his laboratory, the stars were shining. Those stars had never seemed so close. The clock was ticking. The future the Velthari had seen was already beginning to unfold, and the Galactic Council had no idea what was coming. 147. Years had passed since the Galactic Council dismissed the Velthari warning. In that time, the Council had forgotten about the small blue planet called Earth. They had more important things to worry about. Trade disputes, border conflicts, the endless business of managing a galaxy. But on Earth, everything had changed. Humans had survived 2 more terrible wars. They had cured diseases that killed millions. They had built thinking machines to help them solve problems. They had walked on their moon and sent robots to their neighboring planets. And then, using the work that Daniel Carter had begun so long ago, they had finally unlocked the secret of faster-than-light travel. Now, for the first time, a human ship was orbiting a planet outside their own solar system. Captain Samuel Ortiz stood on the bridge of the starship Endeavor. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and a face lined by years of hard service. He had commanded ships in Earth's asteroid belt. He had led rescue missions to the colonies on Mars, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Captain," said his science officer, Grace Liu. She was younger than him, brilliant and eager. "I'm detecting an unknown vessel approaching our position. It's big, really big." Samuel walked to her station and looked at the readings. The approaching ship was 2 kilometers long. It was broadcasting signals on frequencies humans had never used before. "Can you translate those signals?" he asked. "The computer is working on it. The language patterns are completely alien, but the system is adapting." The bridge crew watched in silence as the massive ship came closer. It was beautiful in a strange way, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and glow. Nothing humans had built looked anything like it. "We're being hailed," Grace announced. Samuel straightened his uniform. His heart was pounding, but his voice stayed calm. "Put it through." The main screen flickered. Suddenly, the crew was looking at an alien being for the first time in human history. The creature appeared to be made of crystal. Light bent and danced inside its transparent body. It had a shape that was almost humanoid, but not quite. Its voice, when it spoke, was cold and sharp. "Identified vessel. You have entered space claimed by the Caesori hegemony. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Samuel stepped forward. "I am Captain Samuel Ortiz of the human vessel Endeavor." We come from Earth in the Sol system. We are here on a mission of peaceful exploration. We did not know this space was claimed. There was a long pause. The crystal being seemed to be communicating with others that Samuel could not see. Humans, it finally said. We have records of your species. 147 cycles ago, you were classified as pre-spacefaring. Your presence here is unexpected. Samuel allowed himself a small smile. A lot can change in 147 years. Another pause. Then the being spoke again. You will remain where you are. A delegation from the Galactic Council will come to assess this situation. If you try to leave or move forward, we will consider it an act of war. The transmission ended. Samuel turned to his crew. Well, that could have been worse, Captain Grace said, her voice worried. I'm detecting more ships. Many more, at least 30 of them are heading toward us. Are they armed? Based on their power signatures, I would say definitely yes. Samuel thought about his options. The Endeavor had weapons, but against 30 alien warships, they would be useless. This was not a fight they could win. Power down all weapons, he ordered. Turn off anything that might look threatening. We came here to explore, not to start a war. Over the next several hours, the Endeavor's crew watched as an alien fleet assembled around them. Ships of every size and shape arrived. Some were sleek and elegant. Others were massive and brutal. Finally, the largest ship of all appeared, covered in symbols from many different species. That's the Council delegation, Grace said. They want to come aboard. Samuel nodded. And tell everyone to put on their best uniforms. If we're going to make history, let's look good doing it. The aliens materialized in the Endeavor's cargo bay. There were 7 of them, each one stranger than the last. Samuel recognized the Crystal Kazori from the first contact. The others were beings he had no names for. Their leader was made of pure light, contained in a vaguely human shape. It introduced itself as Adjudicator Prime Luxine. Admiral Ortiz, Luxine said, I speak for the Galactic Council. We have come to evaluate the human situation. We welcome you aboard, Samuel replied. Humanity is honored by your visit. Luxine's light flickered. It seemed surprised. You know of the Council? We've been listening to signals from space for decades, Samuel explained. We knew we weren't alone. We knew that someday we would meet our neighbors. We've been preparing for this moment. One of the other delegates, a being made of swirling particles, spoke up. You came into space knowing that contact with advanced civilizations often destroys younger species. You came anyway. Why? Samuel thought about the question. He thought about all the humans throughout history who had sailed into unknown oceans, climbed impossible mountains, reached for things beyond their grasp. Where we come from, he said, we have a saying, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Humans have always reached for what seemed impossible. It's how we got here. Delegates looked at each other. They seemed uncertain, confused by this strange species that did not behave as expected. As they prepared to leave, one of them approached Samuel directly. It was a Velthary, its transparent body rippling with emotion. Captain, it said quietly, my name is Kurseth. My ancestor was Kurveth, who warned the Council about your kind long ago. She is gone now, but her words remain. Samuel met what he assumed were its eyes. What did she say? She said that when humans came, we should remember that we were warned. She said that your species refuses to accept limits. Tell me, Captain, was she right? Samuel thought about Earth, about all the struggles and triumphs of human history. He thought about the scientists and explorers, the dreamers and builders who had refused to give up. Yes, he said. She was right. Kurseth's form shifted. For a moment, Samuel thought he saw something like hope in the alien's translucent body. Good, it said. Then perhaps there is still time for something wonderful. The delegation left. The Endeavor remained in place, surrounded by alien warships, waiting for the Council to decide the fate of humanity. But Samuel Ortiz was not worried. Whatever happened next, humans had proven something important today. They had reached the stars. They had met their neighbors. And no matter what the future held, they would face it the way they had always faced the unknown, together, unafraid, ready for anything. 53 years had passed since the Endeavor made first contact with the Galactic Council. In that time, humanity had spread to 17 star systems. They had built colonies on dozens of worlds. They had done everything the Council told them they could not do. The Council was not happy about this. First, they imposed trade sanctions. Humans were not allowed to buy or sell goods with Council species, but humans found ways around the rules. They traded with species that were not Council members. They made their own versions of alien technology. Then the Council tried embargoes. They blocked human ships from entering Council space. But humans kept expanding into unclaimed territory, always moving forward, always growing stronger. Finally, the Council decided to use force. Admiral Lisa Monroe stood on the bridge of the carrier Independence. She was 61 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had spent her entire life in the military, rising from a young pilot to the commander of Earth's largest fleet. Now she was facing the greatest challenge of her career. "Port," she said calmly. "Commander Henry Park." Her tactical officer looked up from his screens. "The Kesori fleet is holding position at the edge of the system. They have 47 capital ships and about 200 smaller vessels. In our forces, 12 carriers, 38 cruisers, and 115 destroyers, plus the defense platforms around New Haven." Lisa did the math. They were outnumbered nearly 3-1. The Kesori had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Their ships were bigger and more powerful. Their shields were stronger. Their weapons were more advanced. But they had never fought humans before. Had they made any demands? Lisa asked. "The usual," Henry replied. "They want us to surrender the colony. They want all humans to go back to the Sol system. They want us to accept Council authority. Same thing they demanded at Proxima. Same thing they demanded at Tau Ceti." Lisa allowed herself a small smile. "I'm starting to think they don't have any new ideas. Admiral, with respect, the Kesori haven't lost a war in 6,000 years." Lisa turned to face her tactical officer. "Then they're overdue." The battle began an hour later. The Kesori expected humans to fight defensively. Every other species they had faced had hidden behind their planets and space stations, using gravity and fixed defenses to slow the Kesori advance. It was the logical strategy. It was what the mathematical models predicted. Instead, Lisa Monroe ordered an immediate attack. The human fleet surged forward in a formation that Kesori analysts would later call insane. Carriers launched hundreds of small fighters that swarmed the larger alien ships like angry insects. The fighters targeted sensors and weapons, blinding the enemy and stripping away their ability to fight back. Human cruisers charged directly at the Kesori battle line. They used their shields not for defense, but as weapons, ramming into enemy formations and causing chaos. It was a tactic that no sane species would use. It cost human lives, but it worked. And then there were the torpedoes. For centuries, Council species had used energy weapons, lasers, plasma beams, gravitational pulses. Their shields were designed to block focused attacks. They had never encountered anything like what humans were about to unleash. The first wave of nuclear torpedoes detonated inside the Kesori formation. The explosions were massive, sending waves of radiation and superheated gas in all directions. Kesori shields, designed to stop beams of energy, were useless against explosions that came from everywhere at once. "Direct hits on 7 capital ships," Henry reported. His voice was excited now. "Their formation is breaking apart. Press the attack," Lisa commanded. "Don't give them time to adapt. All units continue forward." The battle lasted 19 hours. Human ships were destroyed by the dozens. Thousands of sailors died at their posts, choosing to keep fighting rather than surrender. But for every human ship lost, 2 or 3 alien vessels were destroyed or crippled. When it was over, the Kesori fleet retreated. They left behind the wreckage of their 6,000-year winning streak. New Haven was safe. Lisa Monroe stood on the observation deck of the Independence. Her ship had taken terrible damage. A third of her crew was dead or wounded. The hull was torn open in a dozen places. but they were still flying. Admiral, her communications officer, called out, "We're receiving a message from the Council flagship. It's Adjudicator Prime Luxine." Lisa straightened what was left of her uniform. "Put it through." Luxine's image appeared on screen. The being of light looked dimmer than usual, subdued in a way that Lisa had learned meant distress. "Admiral Monroe," the Adjudicator said, "the Council wishes to discuss a ceasefire. We're listening. The blockade of human space will be ended. Your species will be granted recognition as a spacefaring civilization. You will be allowed to colonize unclaimed systems." There was a pause. "In return, humanity will stop attacking Council forces and agree to negotiations about your territories." Lisa considered the offer. It was more than the Council had ever offered before. It was exactly what humanity had been fighting for. "I'll send your proposal to Earth," she said. "But I have something to add. Speak. Full membership in the Galactic Council. Voting rights. Equal representation with every other species." Luxine's light flared bright with what might have been shock. "That is unprecedented. New species must prove themselves over centuries before they receive such rights." Lisa gestured at the wreckage floating outside her window. "I think we've proven ourselves today." The transmission ended. 3 weeks later, when the official ceasefire was signed, it included something that would have seemed impossible just days before. There was a pathway for humanity to become full members of the Galactic Council on Earth. People gathered in every city to celebrate. In New Haven, survivors of the siege looked up at the stars and knew that their friends had not died in vain. And in the archives of Station Prime, someone quietly accessed a file that had been forgotten for over a century. It contained the testimony of Ambassador Curvith of the Velthary, her warning that a species from a small blue planet would someday change everything. Someone had finally decided to listen. But for humanity, this was only the beginning. The stars were waiting, and humans had never been good at standing still. 200 years had passed since the Siege of New Haven. Humanity was now a full member of the Galactic Council. Human representatives sat alongside beings that had once laughed at them. Human colonies stretched across 300 star systems. Human scientists had made discoveries that changed how the entire galaxy understood the universe. But not everyone was happy about humanity's rise. Dr. Catherine Walsh was 63 years old. She had spent her entire life studying how different species' bodies worked. Her research on alien biology had won her awards from a dozen worlds. Scientists across the galaxy respected her work. Now she stood in a hospital on a mining world called Kepler 891c, watching thousands of beings die from a disease she could not stop. "The infection rate has reached 87%, said her assistant, Matthew Cole. He was a young man, barely 30, with dark circles under his eyes from days without sleep. "Almost all the Velthary on this planet are dead. The Kessari are dying more slowly, but their numbers drop every hour." Catherine studied the data on her screen. The disease was unlike anything she had ever seen. It attacked the bodies of aliens with terrible efficiency. But humans seemed completely immune. That was the first clue. "This disease is artificial," she said quietly. Matthew looked up sharply. "You mean someone made it?" "I mean someone designed it specifically to kill aliens while leaving humans untouched. This isn't a natural sickness. This is a weapon." The truth was horrifying. If word got out that humans had created a disease to kill other species, it would destroy everything humanity had built. The trust they had earned over 2 centuries would vanish. The Council would have no choice but to respond with force. "We have to find a cure," Catherine said. "And we have to find it before anyone realizes what this really is." For 3 days, Catherine and her team worked without rest. They analyzed the disease, searching for any weakness they could exploit. Scientists from 6 different species joined them. Aliens who had set aside their fear to help stop a plague that was killing their people. It was a Kessari researcher named Torvin who found the answer. "The disease uses a specific protein to identify its targets," Torvin explained. His crystal body was dim with exhaustion. "It recognizes genetic markers that are common in most Council species," but missing in humans. If we can block that protein, we can stop the disease from spreading. Can we make a blocker? Catherine asked. Can try. But we need human genetic material to model the cure. Lots of it. Catherine understood what that meant. Human volunteers would have to give blood and tissue samples on a massive scale. The process would be uncomfortable and possibly dangerous. And it needed to happen immediately. She opened a communication channel to the human colony world of New Terra. Within 6 hours, transport ships were launching, carrying thousands of human volunteers who had answered her call. They came from everywhere, young and old, rich and poor, scientists and factory workers, teachers and soldiers. All of them had heard that aliens were dying and that humans could help save them. That was all they needed to know. The cure was ready within a week. Distributing it was complicated because different species needed different versions. But human medical teams worked alongside alien doctors, learning together, saving lives together. By the time the plague was contained, more than 2 million beings had died. It was a tragedy that the galaxy would remember for generations, but it could have been much worse. The investigation eventually found the source of the plague. A small group of human extremists had created it. They believed humanity should rule the galaxy alone. They hated aliens and wanted them all dead. These extremists were arrested, tried, and punished for their crimes. The galaxy watched as humanity held its own people accountable for the horror they had caused. More importantly, the response to the plague showed something that many aliens had doubted. It showed that humanity could be trusted. When millions of beings were dying, humans had rushed to help. They had given their own blood to save strangers from other worlds. They had proved that they cared about more than just themselves. Catherine Walsh was called to station, primed to receive the Council's highest honor. She stood in the great hall where the Velthory warning had been dismissed centuries ago. Representatives from hundreds of species rose to thank her and the humans who had helped create the cure. Dr. Walsh, said Adjudicator Prime Luxon, your actions have proven that humanity is not just a member of galactic civilization. You are an essential part of it. The Council acknowledges that accepting your species was wise. The warnings about humanity's potential were not warnings of danger. They were predictions of possibility. Catherine thought about the extremists who had created the plague. She thought about the hatred and fear that had driven them. She thought about the millions who had died and the billions who had been saved. Adjudicator Prime, she said, with respect, the same species that made the cure also made the disease. Humanity contains both possibilities. We always have. The question has never been what we can do. It has always been what we choose to do. Luxine's light shifted thoughtfully. What do you believe humanity will choose, Dr. Walsh? Catherine looked out at the assembly. She saw beings from hundreds of worlds who had once feared her people. She thought about the volunteers who had given their blood to save strangers. She thought about the explorers and scientists, the soldiers and healers, all the humans who had reached beyond themselves. I believe we'll keep reaching, she said. That's what we've always done. And as long as there are stars out there, we'll never stop. The ceremony ended. Catherine returned to her research. There was still so much work to do, so many mysteries to solve, so many lives to save. But something had changed. The plague had been a test, and humanity had passed. Not because they were perfect, not because they had no darkness in them, but because when darkness appeared, they chose light instead. That choice, more than any weapon or technology, was what made humanity special. That choice was why the Velthory had been right to be concerned. Humanity was beyond limits. And now, they had proven that their potential for good was just as unlimited as their potential for harm. The future was waiting, and for the first time, the entire galaxy was ready to face it together. 500 years had passed since the Galactic Council first dismissed the Velthory warning about humanity. In that time, everything had changed. Human engineers had made faster-than-light travel 10 times more efficient. Human scientists had unlocked the secrets of dark energy, the mysterious force that pushed the universe apart. Human philosophers had created new ways of thinking that helped species with nothing in common find common ground. And now, Humanity was about to take its greatest step. Administrator. Christopher Bell stood on the observation deck of Station Unity. The station was massive. Larger than some moons, built at the very edge of the Milky Way galaxy. From here, Christopher could see the endless darkness between galaxies. A void so vast that it had always been considered impossible to cross. Until now. Final systems check complete, said Dr. Amy Nguyen, the chief engineer. She was small and intense, with quick eyes that noticed everything. The Horizon Drive is working perfectly. We're ready. Christopher nodded slowly. The Horizon Drive was the greatest achievement in human history. It would allow a ship to travel between galaxies in weeks instead of thousands of years. Scientists from every species had helped build it, but the core breakthrough had come from human minds. Has the council delegation arrived? Christopher asked. They're in the main assembly hall. Every member species sent someone. Even the Velthari came out of isolation for this. Christopher smiled at that. The Velthari had kept to themselves for centuries, ever since their warning was dismissed, but they had asked to be present for this moment. He understood why. The assembly hall was full when Christopher entered. Beings of every shape and form filled the seats. There were crystals and clouds, lights and shadows, giants and tiny creatures that floated in the air. All of them were watching him. Honored delegates, Christopher began. 500 years ago, my ancestors were dismissed as unimportant. The council was warned that humanity would become powerful, and that warning was ignored. I'm not here to criticize that decision. I'm here to say that in some ways the council was right. The hall went quiet. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Humanity alone could never have achieved what we're about to do, Christopher continued. Our technology, our science, our understanding of the universe, all of it was built on knowledge from the species in this room. Every breakthrough we made used wisdom from civilizations much older than ours. We learned from all of you. He paused, letting his words sink in. But if the council was right about one thing, the Velthari were right about another. Humanity does refuse to accept limits. We see barriers not as walls, but as challenges. We see the impossible not as an answer, but as a question. He pointed toward the window where a beautiful ship hung in the darkness. The Odyssey was covered in technology from 100 worlds, its hull gleaming with the combined effort of an entire galaxy. Today, we will do something no one has ever done. We will cross the void between galaxies. Not because it is easy, because there are answers out there we haven't found, because there are beings we haven't met, because there are wonders we haven't seen. A figure rose from the Velthari section. Christopher recognized Kirpith, a descendant of the ambassador who had warned the council so long ago. Administrator Bell Kirpith said, "My ancestor saw this moment. She knew that humanity would one day stand at the edge of the unknown, ready to take a step no species had ever taken. She also knew you would not take that step alone." Kirpith's transparent body rippled with feeling. The Velthari have decided to end our isolation. We want to come with you. Not as observers. As partners. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Then, one by one, other delegates stood up. The Kazori hegemony will send ships and crews. The Ethereal Collective offers our knowledge of navigation. Mercantile guilds will fund the expansion of the fleet. One after another, every species committed to the mission. What had started as a human dream had become something bigger. It was now a galactic dream, the first truly united effort of all known civilization. Christopher felt tears in his eyes. It was a very human reaction to something unprecedented. 500 years ago, he said softly, we were told that humans were beyond limits. Today, I think we've proven that true, but I've learned something else today. Every species in this room has gone beyond what was thought possible. That's not a human trait. It's a trait of life itself. He turned toward the Odyssey. The universe is vast, and we are small. But together, we are more than we could ever be alone. Together, we are beyond limits. The journey to Andromeda took 17 days. Aboard the Odyssey, crews from every species worked side by side. They shared meals and told stories. They learned about each other's cultures and dreams. They passed through regions of space where no one had ever been, seeing things that would take years to fully understand. And when they finally emerged into the light of a new galaxy, surrounded by stars that no one from the Milky Way had ever seen up close, they sent a message home. The message was simple, only 6 words, but those 6 words would be remembered forever. We made it. Humanity invites you. Back on Station Unity, the message was received by a crowd of billions watching from across the galaxy. Cheers erupted on 1,000 worlds. Beings who had once feared humanity now celebrated alongside them. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, the old file about the Velthry warning was accessed one final time. Someone added a note at the bottom. Curvith of the Velthry warned that humans were beyond limits. She was right. But she also saw something else that we missed for too long. Humans don't just push their own limits. They inspire others to push theirs. They don't just reach for the stars. They make others want to reach with them. Perhaps that was the real warning. Perhaps that was always the real promise. The file was closed and archived. The council returned to business. But nothing would ever be the same. Humanity had done what everyone said was impossible. They had united a galaxy. They had crossed the void between stars. And they had done it not by conquering or destroying, but by reaching out their hands and inviting others to join them. The universe was infinite. The journey was just beginning, and for the first time in galactic history, no one was facing that journey alone.